received one. If you put your hand up, we'll give you a hand out. Okay. Anyone need one? Good. Walt, you did your job. Everyone's got one. He always does his job. He's a good job. All right. So how many of you have ever been tempted to sin? So good. We're all have a topic that we can relate to tonight. Obviously, this isn't going to be deep. And hopefully it's just a good reminder for us. This is, so back to, remember, biblical change for overcoming common problems. I think we got through 5 common problems, and we'll come back to it now. And dealing with temptation we'll talk about tonight. So, James chapter 1 in your Bibles. Excuse me. James chapter 1. The truth is, obviously, we all deal with temptation. And unconfessed sin is a primary source of a lot of common problems that we have, right? True? If we're giving in to temptation regularly without putting up a fight, we're actually in trouble. The key is to be fighting temptation. That's actually good news, that you're actually putting up the fight. You're waging the war. But we need to understand the nature of temptation and then see biblical ways to deal with it. So that's what I hope we can accomplish. We won't get through all of this tonight, especially depending on maybe how much input we get from you. But we'll get through a good portion of this and deal with it next time. So that'd be next week, I guess. Right? 18th? It's not Christmas Eve yet, no. Right? Okay, good. All right, so we should begin by defining temptation. Well, that's easy, right? That's not a hard one. Temptation is essentially a solicitation. Almost didn't get that out. Solicitation or an enticement to sin. Does that work? Decent definition. Temptation is a solicitation or an enticement to sin. So let's look at James 1, verses 13 and 14. Very familiar verses, maybe ones you have memorized. Verse 13, let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. So we have this Bible word tempt, and it's used in many places, and sometimes it refers to a testing. So can you think of in the Old Testament when God tested one of the Old Testament saints? Jim?
Abraham being directed to sacrifice his son.
Right. I thought that would be the one that would come out first, for sure. It was a big one. I think the King James will use the word tempt on that, but it's a testing. The word tempt can refer to a trial. In fact, even in James, the first part of James is dealing with trials, how to get through trials, troubles, problems, suffering. But then the part that we're in is dealing with actual temptation. So yes, God tested Abraham's faith when he told him to sacrifice Isaac. So that's a test of faith. That's not a solicitation or an enticement to do evil, because the passage that we're looking at here says God does not tempt anyone. Okay? God never tempts anyone to sin. Is a solicitation to sin a test or a trial of your faith? We'll take it that way. is a solicitation to sin a test or trial of your faith? Well, I think it is, but not every test or trial is an enticement to sin. So, facts about temptation. This will work. Temptation is universal. What does James say? Verse 14. Every man is tempted. Temptation, according to 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 13, it says it's common to man. Temptation is common. Is that one you have memorized? There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. And then it says, but God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that you're able, but will with the temptation make a way for escape. So, it's universal. It's common to man. We live with temptations every day. I think if you be honest and you think about it, every day there's some temptation that you face. I just don't know that we're aware of that every day. We think about that every day. Temptation has been common not only to man, but common to every culture in every time. Okay, there's no escaping this. Actually, our Western culture has been, in the past, somewhat tame compared to some other cultures. Again, nothing is new under the sun. We tend to see, because of the world that we live in, that we would probably agree that our American culture, it's waxing worse and worse. But that doesn't mean that it's worst of all time in history and among all cultures. Again, historically speaking, the Western culture has been somewhat tame. If you think of Greek culture and Roman culture, it was pretty decadent. So, but yes, it's true. In our culture, things are getting worse and worse all the time. Is it true to say that our young people probably have more, maybe not more temptation, but they have more opportunity to give in to? I don't know if that's the way I want to say it. Do you know what I mean? You're supposed to read my mind right now. Jim?
They have far more exposure to temptation.
More exposure.
As children.
Creates more opportunity.
Yeah, there's more opportunity. So would we agree with that? Thank you. That was what I was trying to say and couldn't get it out of my mouth. Yes. Okay. In fact, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Clearly, temptation is not sin. Temptation is not sin. What would be the key indicator of that in the Bible? Temptation is not sin. Jesus was tempted. Yet he didn't sin. But he was tempted. The Bible says he was tempted in all points like we are. So, do you remember the temptation of Jesus by Satan in the wilderness? What were the points in which he was tempted? It's the same ones that are in that list also in James. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the what of life? Pride of life. Jesus was tempted in all of those ways, in all of those points. Yielding to sin is the problem. Being tempted is not a sin, but yielding to temptation is a sin. We would agree with this, right? Temptation may be satanic. In fact, Satan is called the tempter. Matthew 4 and verse 3, that's actually the temptation of Jesus by Satan. And there he's called the tempter. The verse says, now when the tempter came to him, can we say he's the father of temptation? Well, let's go back to the very beginning of time. Genesis, he is the father of temptation. He originated the idea, the plan. However, can we use, you remember the old excuse? Who made me do it? The devil made me do it. The devil tempts, but can we use that as an excuse? And the answer is no, we cannot. Okay? Temptation is closely associated with human desire and lust. Temptation works by appealing to something inherent and organic within humanity. So again, James 1:14, look at it. Every man is tempted when he's drawn away of the next three words. His own lust. Okay? Remember the Pharisees? You're defiled because you didn't wash your hands. And Jesus says, the problem is already where? It's already in your heart. Okay? So the passions of the flesh, our appetites, they're in us. Now, is this a true statement? The passions of the flesh, our appetites, in and of themselves are not wrong. Can we say that?
Yes.
We can. I'll say it again. The passions of the flesh, just think about that. The passions of the flesh or our appetites in and of themselves are not wrong. Where do passions and appetites come from?
The Lord.
They actually do. It's a God-given part of humanity. So before you think I'm getting goofy on that, let me illustrate it, okay? Do we have a natural desire to eat? All right. Boy, my problem is I love to eat. I love to eat. Do we have a natural desire to sleep? For sure. I need less of the eating, more of the sleeping. That's me. I can go to sleep quickly, but I wake up too early and can't go back to sleep. But before I get too silly, we do have a natural desire to eat, and we have a desire to sleep. But if we eat too much, is it a sin? Actually is. The Bible talks about gluttony, right? If we sleep too much, could that be a sin? Yes. Just ask the mother and father that's trying to wake up their child to get them to go to school in the morning. Get up. You've got work to do. You've got to get to school. So we have a natural desire. Do we have a natural desire for companionship? So another example. Yes. Is that God-given? Desire for companionship. Companionship with the opposite sex, yes. But marriage is God's program for the fulfillment of that. Outside of marriage, that's a problem. To fulfill that desire outside of marriage is sinful. So in our sinfulness, we tend to corrupt God's plan, or if I can say his program for fulfilling our natural desires. Every natural appetite can be fulfilled in a sinful way. So the lust of the flesh is very strong. It is. It's very strong. And sometimes it's stronger than human willpower. Okay? Just understand, you can't fight temptation and you can't fight the flesh solely by your own power. So we need help, right? So we'll get to that in a few minutes too. Our appetites can become so intense that sometimes they override our brain, right? That's pretty powerful. Our mind's capacity to maintain control. That's how strong it can be. It gets to that point. Once we start giving in to the flesh, our appetites have this capacity, if you will, to overrule good common sense. Okay, doesn't Proverbs talk about this? You know, the guy, he's like a dumb ox. right? And he just walks right into danger. Sometimes overrule common sense. The appetites take over, the rational mind shuts down, and a strong desire can overcome good intentions. So we need more than good intentions. Okay. The results of giving in to desire can be catastrophic. And many of the problems people experience result from a lack of self-discipline over their inner desires. Would someone look up Proverbs 7, verse 5, and then someone else, Proverbs 7, 22 and 23. Who could read Proverbs 7, 5? Just very, very short verse. Jim's got Proverbs 7, 5, but then who would do Proverbs 7, 22 to 23? All right, Stacy. So, Jim, go ahead and read Proverbs 7, 5.
Proverbs 7:5. That they may keep you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters with her words.
Okay, I wanted that read so then we can see what it says in 22 to 23. Stacy?
He comes after her straightway as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of stalks, till a dart strike through his liver, and the bird hastens to the snare, and knows not that it is for his life.
Okay, there's the ox illustration. Jim?
I think it's good to read verse 1 first.
Go ahead, read verse 1.
My son, keep my words and treasure my commands within you.
Yes, this is Solomon writing to help his son. And so we see how giving in can be catastrophic. And we see there also lack of self-control, self-discipline with these inner desires and lusts. Now, temptation usually follows a pattern. Let's go back and look at James 1, 14 and 15. Temptation usually follows a pattern. What is the pattern? Who wants to tell us what the pattern is? James 1, 14, 15. Starts with?
Self.
Pardon?
His own desires.
Say, I didn't hear you.
He said self.
Self.
Self, okay, yeah. What's the pattern there?
Starts with the temptation.
Starts with the temptation
Drawn
and
away,
being drawn away. Drawn away by what?
his own desires.
The desires, the lusts. Okay, and then that can lead to, many times does lead to what? Sin. And then it talks about when the lust is conceived, it brings the sin. The sin, when it's finished, brings forth death. So the process of giving into temptation usually starts in small ways. Is that true? Now, you usually don't hear about someone and, boy, they've been doing well. You don't see problems in their life. And then just all of a sudden this gross, horrible, terrible sin. You don't work that way, okay? We should recognize that. When we compromise in small ways, we're in danger of going down a road where that can lead to catastrophic things. And so we should put the guards up on the small things. There's been times in my life when I was criticized for having, quote, too high of standards, whether that was for my family or for the schools that I was a leader of. The standards are too high. You're gonna breed rebellion. Not necessarily. If you can remember, we talked about parenting a number of Sundays ago, and you have those 4 different kinds of parents. You do this right. You explain. You start early, right? You got to start really early. But if you explain and you lovingly share why we're going to do the things we do and why we're not going to do the things we're not going to do. And you're loving about that. No, let's not fear doing the right thing. Sometimes parents fear, if I do this, it will breed rebellion. No. So we set some standards pretty high. Were they Bible rules? No, they were principles that I took from Scripture and said, I got to make an application. So for me and my family, we're going to draw the line pretty high. Okay? So where I drew the line wasn't a biblical command. It was based on a biblical principle, and I had to draw it somewhere. So Dana and I, and as a school administrator, I decided, let's draw the lines fairly high, because there's also this other principle. Wherever I draw the line, eventually those kids under my influence, they're probably going to draw it somewhere lower, and hopefully we're still okay. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So the point is simply this: temptation and sin usually starts in small ways. Okay, we make minor compromises, and then we move on to greater and greater sins. So flagrant sin usually begins with small compromise. I think that's would help us if we would understand that. Let's not make the small compromises. The author of The Bewilderment of Sin wrote this: nearly every grave moral failure begins with a small sin, because there comes a time after we toy with sin when one pull of the flesh causes us to cross the line, to disengage from reason, and to follow our appetites wherever they may lead. So let's talk about the example of King David. Okay, you know his great sins. There were 2 of them. Okay, how did they start? What's your recollection of David's sin, and what kinds of things seem to contribute or lead up to it? Where did it start? Les?
He didn't do his duty and go to war.
Yes, he didn't do his duty. When it was time for the king to go to war, he didn't go. And, if we can stay busy doing the things that God would have us to do and concentrate on those things and keep ourselves busy with those things, do you think it will help us? Sure. Okay, what else? What else was part of that progression? Jim?
His eyes.
His,
He saw Bathsheba.
his, yes, I'm sorry, I was cutting you off. His eyes. So here's the question. The first thing that he saw was that sin on his part. Okay? No. And boy, we better believe that in our culture, we're going to see some things that if we indulge in those areas, we're going to be sinning. But coming across something without going after it is not necessarily sin. I hope that made sense. I hope you understand what I mean by that. So he is up on the rooftop, and he looks, and there's a woman bathing up there. Okay? But what then did he do? He set his gaze on it, and then, yes, he sent for her. And then ultimately, there was this spiraling down of sin that leads to adultery, and then the murder of who? Uriah. And what was Uriah to David?
He was one of his 30.
Say that again?
He was one of his 30 named officers.
Yes. One of his mighty men type of guys, right? His friend. Wow. Temptation and cover up and sin can get really horrible, can't it? Okay. Are you and I capable of committing any sin? Yeah, we are. The grossest of sins? That's right. Yes. Okay. I'm thankful for some common grace that I don't do everything that I'm capable of doing, and I can do anything. So when I hear, I've heard this more than once. Plenty of times I've actually heard parents say to me, "My child wouldn't do that." And I just look at it and I try to be kind and I try to be patient about it, but I just say to them, my theology tells me that's not true. Your theology should tell you that that statement you just made is not true. Well, my child doesn't lie. That's when you want to get frustrated and say, what planet do you live on? My child doesn't lie. I lie. Do you lie? Are you deceptive? Wow. But I've heard it. And if you're a teacher in the room, don't raise your hand. But have you heard that? Stuff like that? My child. Yeah, in the preschool parents. Jim?
Has any parent ever not heard, I didn't eat the cookies?
Yeah. The kid's got chocolate all over his face. There's plenty of videos like that. Actually, it's sad when I see some of those videos that the parent thinks it's cute. That the kid's got chocolate all over his face. Did you eat cookies? No, I didn't eat cookies. And they're laughing behind the video. That's not funny. What were you going to say, Les?
I was going to say when they said that, they just lied.
Yes, just saying that is a lie. So, my child doesn't lie. Wow, who's your child? It's amazing. But I've heard it. You know what that is when parents do that? What is that?
Pride.
It's just pride. It's just pride. Look, there's plenty of times as a parent where I was very embarrassed of what my son did or the other son did. Rarely Elise. She's over there. Elise was just smart. I mean, she would see what happened to her brothers. Her eyes would get this big. So I don't want to do that. No, she's a sinner too. But it's how it is with dads, right? Their daughters are, we treat them differently. All right, I'm getting silly. Let's move on. No, these sins begin in little ways. We can't toy with sin. We shouldn't play with sin. And where do you think, and let's end with this, and we'll finish this next week, maybe. Practically speaking, where do you think most of our temptation comes from today? Just help, if you're a parent in the room or maybe it's just helpful for us to say, what are some places?
The internet.
The internet? Is the internet a place of temptation? Television, the internet? Friends? Did you say friends? Really? Yes. Solomon said that to his son. Be careful of who your friends are. Is that even a problem for adults?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Who do you talk with at work? And yeah, we all have that temptation. I mean, I got Pastor Randy next to me. He's a great example to me. He's a big help. That was a joke. Okay. But your Walt spoke up. I don't know what he said, but I can imagine. Betsy's perfect, though.
Yes.
Don't worry about Betsy. No, but I've been in work environments up until I was in full-time ministry where the interaction with men that I worked with, there's a lot of temptation there and a lot of wanting to fit in and doing dumb things because I wanted to fit in. So, so really, the TV can be a problem.
Oh, the shows are ridiculous.
Shows are ridiculous. Really, the internet can be a problem. We're smart enough to know this, right? That the internet, they're out there fishing, and they're going to try to put something in front of your eyes, and it might be a teen boy, might be a teen girl. There was a boy in my school in Michigan, and his introduction to pornography was he was searching for games on the internet. He loved playing computer games. And this was way back in the day. So he's searching for different games. He misspelled the word games. There was a Z on the end of his games, and it opened up pornographic games. And like every red-blooded American boy, he gazed on that. And then months later, he was in my office with his dad, and they were weeping over the fact that he had an addiction to pornography. So that's how it starts. So we have to be very careful. Where else do you think are the big places for temptation today? So internet and the television. Anything else? Why do we have to know this, Pastor Rob? Well, it's just good practical stuff. And if you're a parent or a grandparent, I don't know if we're as wise concerning temptation to help our kids as we should be. Yes, Juan. The eye. Yeah. Again, it's in us. Anything we can see. All right.
The highway.
The highway, billboards. Okay.
Football tonight, we
No,
don't get
no, I mean, has anybody ever seen the signs for all the Burlington exits, the so-called safety zone?
Yeah.
It's 70 miles an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be 55.
Yeah.
Peer pressure is very high.
Peer pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will tell you that the smartphone and the apps and the social media, it's killing our kids. And I'm working on developing a series of lessons for parents just on that topic. It's killing adults too. But I don't know, I just don't understand it, why a parent, and this is common, hands a kid a smartphone at age 13. I mean, I just say, I'll say it nicely, I'll try to be nice about it, but that's just foolish. It's just foolish.
Yeah,
What's that?
even younger.
Even younger, yeah. I mean, it's not like back in the day where you could get, if you wanted to get a young teenager a phone, it was a flip phone. There was numbers you could press, and maybe you could access the internet, but it was too difficult. It was so hard to work with on a flip phone. It wasn't even worth the effort. Okay, but now it's all smartphones, and parents are just letting their kids have it. And I say, you know, you might some night you might just want to go to your son's bedroom at midnight and open the door, because don't be surprised if he's on that phone. But parents give in to their kids and then they just walk away. I mean, I don't understand it. I hope our parents aren't doing it.
In my granddaughter's schools in Montana, the sexual, bisexual, be whatever gender you want, that is being purposely taught by the adults, by the school system.
Yeah. There's actually, though, on the other side of it, there's actually some public schools now where they're just confiscating phones when the kids walk in. Ellen gave me an article, a couple articles a couple weeks ago that's going to be part of my material, that just the danger of these things, and even secular people saying, we don't need these phones in school. They're causing lots of, they may not have all the good moral reasons, but they just know this is trouble. So, maybe in that sense has more wisdom sometimes than Christian parents. Excuse me.
So in the workplace, they now have these, you know how you have road signs and all these sort of things, danger, road signs, all that. They have a sign now that says, don't be a cell phone zombie. And they have them near all the staircases and everything else, because people would just be on their phone and not with a hand on the handrail.
Yeah.
And slip and fall activities, right? Because they're just,
Yeah, even if it's not getting into sin, it's just these phones are just so powerful. Let's admit it. If you have one, have you ever spent too much time doing something on one? Guilty. And I mean, people walking over curbs into streets getting hit by cars